February 2nd, 2025, on 12:18 a.m. was a day that's going to be remembered in history for, depending on who you're a fan of, the right or wrong reason. Now, for those of you guys who are wondering, who aren't all the way in the loop, how could you not be? But if you aren't, that was the day that Luka Doncic was traded to the Los Angeles Lakers for none other than Anthony Davis and Max Christie. Now, of course, the headliners of this trade is Luka Doncic and Anthony Davis, but it's other pieces that were included in this trade. But that was the move that set off the entire deadline. Prior to this, people were kind of skeptical, kind of scared, hesitant of this deadline being anything as to what we've seen in the past. The past deadlines have been kind of good, been pretty impressive overall. Of course, there are certain points that have been underwhelming, but for the most part, past couple of deadlines, the past couple of years have been phenomenal. But this one was kind of stalling out. We weren't really seeing the trades. The most we were hearing was Jimmy Butler might get dealt, but then a report came out that Jimmy Butler might want to stay, and then he might want to. All of this stuff was coming out. So prior to this, I'm not gonna lie, me included, wasn't really expecting a very hectic trade deadline, honestly and truthfully. And then the Luka news dropped. Luka was traded to the Lakers, and this just set off a whirlwind of things, a whirlwind of trades. It was just the first domino to fall. And this trade deadline, unlike any others, is filled with winners and losers. Now, to start off with the winners, I think it's easy. The biggest winner trade deadline, in my opinion, is the Los Angeles Lakers. Why is Los Angeles? Was pretty simple. You got Luka Doncic. And let's just put into perspective who Luka Doncic is. Luka Doncic is a 5-time All-NBA first team. He's only been in the league 6 years. He's a 5-time All-NBA first team selection. He's a perennial All-Star, a perennial MVP candidate. He was a runner-up for MVP last year. And the Lakers got him for Anthony Davis, Max Christie, first-round pick. And it's not even the oh-so-coveted and sought-after 2031 first-round pick. Now, of course, this Luka trade means a lot for the Lakers because before this, you had LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and not to say the future was looking kind of bleak, but wasn't really looking very well. You had J.J. Redick as the coach, but LeBron is 40. Anthony Davis is 31. Realistically, what was the future of this team looking like? Especially considering the fact they didn't have any picks to really trade for. They didn't really have any promising young players to look to take over that spot that a LeBron or AD could leave once their career is over. But now that you have Luka Doncic, it's quite easy and quite safe to say that for the next 10 years, Lakers are in a great shape. But moving past the Lakers, let's now get into the second biggest winner from the trade deadline, in my opinion. And that is none other than the Cleveland Cavaliers, who made a huge trade to get a wing that they were searching for so long. The type of wing that they were trying to look for in Isaac Okoro and other players that they had drafted, but they just didn't fulfill what they needed. And that's none other than DeAndre Hunter from the Hawks. DeAndre Hunter had been having a pretty good year this year, and the Cavs have been looking for a player like that. A player who, no, he's not going to command as much attention that Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland will, but he's solid enough on offense to get his own shot. He can make his shots, and he can be a defender that can defend those premier threats that they're going to face, like a Jason Tatum, like a Jaylen Brown, and other people that they could face in the playoffs, or even if they are able to, the NBA Finals. Next winner I have behind the Cavaliers and the Lakers is none other than the Miami Heat, who finally got off Jimmy Butler and kind of freed themselves from that very chaotic and toxic situation that was going on. They relieved Jimmy Butler, but it's really for what they got back from him. They got Andrew Wiggins, PJ Tucker, who ended up getting traded, in the first-round pick. That is a really good get for Jimmy Butler. Because at this point, Jimmy Butler was just doing more harm than good. He was causing a lot of tension in the locker room, causing a lot of drama, and it was just a big distraction. And at this point, it had been going on for so long that the Heat would have taken, I'm sure, almost anything just to get him off of the team. And it makes sense, because ever since Jimmy Butler had left for that suspension and the suspension after that one, players like Khalil Ware, Tyler Herro have been playing phenomenally. And then you had a player like Andrew Wiggins, who seems, in my opinion, to fit in very nicely with that Miami Heat team. But biggest of all, you get rid of a player who was just creating a lot of problems in that city. And it's hard to kind of try to develop players like a Khalil or just continue as a basketball team when you have that black cloud over your franchise. Every time you're in press conference, you're getting asked about Jimmy. You get asked what did Jimmy say? Has Jimmy talked to you? You can't even talk about the game and focus on moving forward. But they don't have to deal with that anymore because Jimmy is gone. And speaking of winners and Jimmy Butler, I think Jimmy might be the biggest winner out of all of this. Put it like this. He finally was relieved of his duties for Miami and traded to one of his preferred trade destinations, Golden State. And he got the extension that he had been searching for ever since the summer. This is the same extension that started this big tension that had been occurring for all season in Miami. When Jimmy went to the Warriors immediately agreed to a 2-year, $121 million contract for Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler is an older player, so with him being older, a lot of teams were hesitant to pay him that much money. And it seemed like unless the Heat deal him to a team who's willing to sign him on for that much money because he's making $60 million a year, it probably wasn't going to happen. But Golden State needed it. Golden State made a move, in my opinion, out of desperation to get another star next to Steph. And they did whatever it took to get him there, which includes signing an extension. And another huge winner in the trade deadline is none other than the San Antonio Spurs. And once again, not much has to be said. You get your lead guard, who is entering his prime, to pair next to Victor Wembanyama and De'Aaron Fox. De'Aaron Fox is a player who can put a lot of pressure on defenses with going downhill and with his lethal ability for mid-range. And he's entering his prime, and he's going to be mentored by the looks of Chris Paul. It doesn't really get that much better than that. And the final two winners I have out of this entire trade deadline are the Charlotte Hornets and the Washington Wizards. It's pretty simple. The Wizards, they got us Kyle Kuzma, who wasn't really playing very well and had came out to say some pretty negligent things that were negatively affecting the team. They shipped him out to a winner to Milwaukee, and they got some nice pieces back like A.J. Johnson, some picks, and Chris Middleton. Now, for the Hornets, you got off of Mark Williams, who over the years had struggled with a lot of injuries. He never really was very healthy, even though he had showed flashes of what he could be in the NBA. You get off him, send him to a destination like the Lakers, you get a 23rd pick, and you get a nice player in Dalton Knecht, who could fill in very well next to a Brandon Miller and a LaMelo Ball. Now, let's get into the losers. The teams who, when they made moves or didn't, their fans weren't feeling very well about it. The first one is quite obvious. The Dallas Mavericks. I mean, you gave up your superstar, your future, a top 3 player in the entire NBA for a aging Anthony Davis, who in his own right is amazing, all defensive first team, all NBA first team, still that caliber of player. But he's 31 and he struggled with injuries throughout his career. How much longer does he have? I guarantee you don't have 10 more years like, say, Luka Doncic would have. And on top of that, all that Luka had did for that franchise, and you didn't get nearly the amount of resources that you could have gotten back for him. Now, behind them is the Phoenix Suns, in my opinion. Now, the Phoenix Suns didn't make any moves, and honestly, I wasn't really too mad at them for not making any moves, because at the end of the day, if you wasn't getting Jimmy Butler, who realistically would you have been able to get? Why I call them losers, though, is because now they're probably going to have to deal Kevin Durant. And Kevin Durant, yes, he's aging. He's an aging star. He doesn't have the same type of explosiveness, the same type of star power as he did 3, 4, or 5 years ago. But KD's still pretty good. He's still averaging 27 points per game on pretty good efficiency. He's a high-level top 10 player in the NBA still at this age. But because of the way it went around the whole trade deadline, once they realized they couldn't get Jimmy Butler, they started shopping KD. One could argue out of desperation because you can't move Bradley Beal. Stuff got really murky for Phoenix, and it's looking like this offseason, they're probably going to have to deal Kevin Durant. My next losers of the trade deadline is the Atlanta Hawks. Why? Because you give a player like DeAndre Ayton, one of the most sought-after players these past couple of trade deadlines, for way less than what you could have gotten. You didn't even get a first-round pick back for DeAndre Ayton. Think about this. In a trade with the Cavaliers, who were looking for the exact prototype of a player like DeAndre Hunter, you didn't get a first-round pick for him. You have the leverage. You have the leverage in a trade like that, and you didn't use it well enough at all. Now, we can only see how that goes as the summer, as time goes on, but right now, if I'm an Atlanta fan, I'll be very scared for your future because it's not looking very good. And moving on to the last loser of the trade deadline, this might be a little controversial to some, but it's pretty easy to me. The Golden State warrior. Now, I understand the sentiment of getting a player like Jimmy Butler. These past couple of years, especially in the playoffs, he's been phenomenal. He's rose the Heat to heights that I don't think it's a lot of players in the NBA that could do. But Jimmy Butler is old, and this seemed like a desperate move to put a star next to Steph Curry at the chance of making a finals again and getting him one more ring. However, I just don't like the move. Jimmy Butler's old. You already sold when you had let Klay Thompson walk, but you kept Draymond Green. This just isn't a bad look, and I don't think Jimmy Butler's going to give the Warriors the type of push that they're looking for. I think this actually puts a nail in the coffin for the rest of Steph Curry's time in Golden State. Steph Curry's old. We're already seeing him to start regress a little bit in certain areas. He's still a great shooter, one of the best shooters in the NBA, but what he can do with the ball in his hands has regressed over the past couple of years. And I think we're starting to see that this year. And a player like Jimmy Butler, who is older, and of course he provides some good defense, he isn't really going to relieve too much of that stress off of Steph. Jimmy isn't really that big of a threat from outside. However, he is really good at slashing, but the Warriors don't have... That just wasn't the area they really needed. Yes, you would have liked defense, but you would have liked more of a shot creator who could be more of a threat from the perimeter and not just inside. Now, I feel like there's one more category throughout the whole trade deadline that is kind of overlooked. We are so quick to give teams winners and losers and talk about whatever moves they make, and I think we tend to forget as NBA fans that over time, we have to figure out whether it's a big win or loss. It's not so clear cut for these teams. And I have a couple teams listed. The first one being the Sacramento Kings. Now, off ripping that trade, I feel like you could have gotten a lot more for De'Aaron Fox. I know you got Zach LaVine, you brought him to Sacramento, that's cool, but I just don't really know how to feel about them over time. Honestly, if I were to put them in a category, it would probably be losers. I like Zach LaVine, I like Domantas Sabonis. I just don't like their ceiling. You don't have a true point guard. Malik Monk is going to run your point guard. And of course, people are going to talk about the playmaking strides Malik Monk has made this season, which he has to his credit, but they're just not good enough. You need a true point guard. And on top of that, you have Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and Domantas Sabonis. How far are they really going to take you? Now, the next team that kind of fits in this TBD category is the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, of course, they get a player like Kyle Kuzma, who is younger than Chris Middleton and has not had as many health issues as Chris Middleton has had, but Chris Middleton just meant so much to the team. He was just a big part of their championship a couple years ago. He was at one point a perennial all-star in the NBA, a big piece next to Giannis. And now you just give him to the Washington Wizards. But you do get Kyle Kuzma back, and I'm very interested to see what Kyle Kuzma can be because Chris Middleton, those ankle surgeries didn't do him any favors at all over the summer. And I think we're kind of seeing as the season has played out that, yeah, he can give you production here and there. He's still efficient, but you just can't give him the amount of minutes you want to. You have to put him on a minutes restriction. And the Bucks are trying to maximize this Damian Lillard and Giannis duo that they have going on. So you bring in a player like Kyle Kuzma who, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinion, just has not been that good this season. But I put him in the TBD category because who knows what Kyle Kuzma can turn into next to Giannis and next to Dame. Two players who already garner enough attention on their own. Kyle Kuzma could potentially take advantage of that as a sneaky third option. And the final team in this TBD category is none other than the Toronto Raptors, who were able to acquire Brandon Ingram over the trade deadline. A player that they didn't really have to sell very high on, which is pretty standard for a executive like Masai Ujiri. He likes to buy low on these players who have high upside, and Brandon Ingram over the past couple years, he's been just that. He's been in New Orleans as all of the players he came with left him. Lonzo left him, went to Chicago. Josh Hart has been everywhere around the world, and now he's with the Knicks. And Zion Williams has not been very good. So Pelicans trading away for some picks and some players. And why I have the Raptors in this TBD category is pretty simple because you already have a player like Scotty Barnes who, once again, has been pretty good over the past couple of years. You pair him with a player like Brandon Ingram, who knows what can happen to that roster in the future. But this is just my overall opinion on the trade deadline. Now, like I said, off that Luka move alone, this is probably the best trade deadline I have ever witnessed. And it's been said by many to be the best trade deadline ever. And I can't really argue with them for that. You got Luka moved, Jimmy Butler got moved, Brandon Ingram got moved, DeAndre Hunter got moved. A bunch of big name players were moved this trade deadline, and that's something that we're probably not going to see for a long time. Till next year, maybe, when another star gets to grown up and they leave to try to go somewhere else. But these are just my opinions. Let me know how you guys feel in the comments, not just about the trade deadlines, but about the moves that teams made. Maybe they were your favorite team, maybe they were your least favorite team. Talk about all that down below in the comments. Make sure you like the video. If you enjoyed it, give me a subscription. I'm making videos like this all season. I'll continue to make them. But that's all I have. And until next time, peace.